This is my viola d'amore, which I bought off of eBay a while ago. The viola d'amore is most commonly associated with music of the Baroque era during the 17th and 18th centuries. My viola d'amore was manufactured in Hebei province in China. 30 years ago, some of you may know, violins made in China were very cheap and were extremely poor quality too, so Chinese violins got a very bad reputation. But since then, Chinese violins have come quite a long way. They're still very cheap in price, but the quality has improved dramatically. In recent years, the violin has become something of a national obsession in China. There are tens of millions of children who are studying the violin, and quite a lot of manufacturers and workshops trying to manufacture violins to keep up with the demand for violins. And China has also been exporting quite a lot of instruments. Some Chinese violin makers have been experimenting with different designs, including 5-string violins, violins with some very fancy inlay work, and the Norwegian Hardanger fiddles. Some have been reproducing older style and Baroque instruments, such as the viola d'amore, which I'm holding here, pochette violins, which you can carry in your pocket, and the viola da gamba. Now, the strings that they give you from the Chinese factory are completely worthless. In fact, the listing on eBay says, "The strings of this instrument aren't exact. Since we haven't found the right strings for it, please put the right strings on it by yourself. Please understand." So yes, the first thing that you'll need to do is to get some proper viola d'amore strings for it. Your local violin shop is unlikely to carry viola d'amore strings, and the only place that I found that sells them is a website, juststrings.com, and which I've listed below in the description section. The strings are rather costly, about $150 for the full set of 14 strings. The sympathetic strings are extremely difficult to put on the instrument without ruining them. In fact, I ruined one set and had to order another. So you might want to think about getting a luthier to do it for you. You have to fish them up very carefully. These are the sympathetic strings here, between the neck and the fingerboard. They go through a hole here that runs underneath the fingerboard, and then they come out here behind the nut. I guess you can see them here. And then go through to the back of the headstock, and the strings run up the back of the headstock to their pegs at the top. And the hardest part is fishing the strings up behind the fingerboard without getting them all tangled up together. And if they become tangled, then you have to take them out and try again. And if a string becomes kinked in the process, then you're probably not going to be able to use it. The sympathetic strings also have to go through holes in the bottom of the bridge here. Let's see. I guess you can see them now. Originally, the holes on the instrument were too small for some of the thicker strings on this side. I remember the strings that came with it weren't authentic viola d'amore strings at all. I had to take them all out, and the strings were a lot thinner than the authentic strings, and the hole was too small to accommodate some of the thicker strings for the deeper sounding side of the instrument. So I had to get out my drill and drill wider holes to accommodate the viola d'amore strings. And the strings go down below the tailpiece and are attached each to one of these three end pins here at the bottom. The strings have loop ends on them, so you have to fit the loop over the end pin and push the end pin into the bottom of the instrument. And a serious problem I had was that the loops at the bottom of the strings were much too small for the end pins. So I had to squeeze the loops carefully onto the end pins and expand the loops slightly without breaking the string. And in the end I was successful. The strings that you play on, the 7 strings on top, go on just like regular violin strings. Each one has a fine tuner here at the bottom and a friction peg at the top. So you're good to go as far as those strings go. The strings are tuned to a D chord, thus the bottom string is A, then D, then A, then D, then F sharp, then A, then D. Now, I haven't tuned the instrument recently, so it's probably not in perfect pitch, but you'll probably want to get one of these clip-on chromatic tuners that attach to the instrument and feel the vibration, so you'll be able to get the strings exactly in tune. The sympathetic strings at the bottom are tuned exactly the same way as the strings on the top. But you don't have any fine tuners to help you get the strings as close as you might like to in tune, so you have to do your best with the friction pegs at the top of the headstock for getting the sympathetic strings in tune. Also, I don't have the F sharp sympathetic string. I really couldn't get it through here without the string wrapping itself around the other strings, and the string eventually got kinked and mangled to the point where I couldn't use it at all, so I gave up and I'm making do without it. If you're thinking about buying a viola d'amore from China, then you might want to consider negotiating with the seller about putting a set of authentic strings on the instrument, even if you have to buy the strings yourself and ship them to him ahead of time. Now, as you know, from about the end of the 18th century, fingerboards have been made from ebony. This fingerboard obviously isn't ebony, and I think that the manufacturers are going for a Baroque look in the Baroque style instruments. Now, given the tuning of the instrument, you may be somewhat limited to playing pieces that are in the key of D, or you can tune the F sharp string down to F natural and play in D minor. The strings and the fingerboard are quite flat, as you might notice, which makes it very difficult to play on one string at a time, especially among the middle strings. So most of the time you'll be playing double or triple stops or drone strings, which is part of the beauty of having the instrument tuned to the key in which you are playing. Also, the strings are extremely close together, and it's very hard to play it without covering 2 strings with 1 finger. So go ahead and cover 2 strings, but be careful not to bow on the lower string or the upper string perhaps, because it might not fit in with the chord that you're playing. You can find links to some of my playing in the description below. Something else you'll want to get is a shoulder rest for it. I got a viola-sized shoulder rest. Fits on there so you can hold it comfortably under your chin like any other violin or viola. And I don't know of any place that you can buy a case for it, so I keep mine in a guitar gig bag, which makes it easy for carrying it around or storing it in the house, but doesn't provide the same type of protection that a good hard case would. So please leave any comments or questions in the comment section below, and I'll try to get back to you. Thanks very much for listening.